It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. We come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for about an hour. It's a panel discussion. We throw invites out to the people over on gunchannels.com, a community we built almost 6 years ago now. People that are interested in a conversation about firearms. So this is an attempt at the new media, interactive media. So we encourage people that are watching on the various platforms to use the text chats that are out there to be part of our conversation. Got people jumping in from all over the country. Dead Horse jumping in from Utah. Thanks for joining.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
You bet. Dano's jumping in from Illinois. Thanks for jumping in.
Glad to be here.
Down in Arizona, we got a bunch of invites out there. A couple of different shows are live right now on gun channels, so we're corking them, I guess. And been all kinds of stuff going on live all night. But we'll see if other people join us. But again, the people that are watching us live, we encourage you to be part of our conversation. This is episode 796. We've been doing the show for a little while. This will be the week we hit 800 episodes. So I guess Friday will be episode 800. Am I doing the math right? Yeah. So looking forward to doing something for the episode 800. That's a pretty cool one. Or maybe 799. But otherwise, each day we do a different kind of theme or focus. And on Mondays, we usually look behind the scenes. We talk about tech. We talk about how to create content. We encourage everybody to value your voice, value your contribution to the conversation about guns. I personally have been around for a while and know a lot of the people in the 2A media. And there are no superheroes. Nobody's got the Constitution or the Second Amendment around their neck like a cape and is going to do anything for you. There's just a bunch of people that have been doing consistent effort, from their end for a while, and people have helped with that. But we always need new people. We need a next generation. We need people to be part of the volume that's out there right now. And the efforts that I've seen people do over the years have been tremendous. And now that I've got more, I guess, perspective on it, insight over the years, some of the stuff that people have done on their own, just individual projects, have dwarfed some of the stuff that exists today as national level, Second Amendment work. So it's unfortunate that people didn't value their efforts or their stuff, and they walked away from it, considering how big it could have been. Anyway, without getting too much on that, we like to encourage people to use your voice, use your phones, use keyboards, microphones, and cameras to be part of the conversation, to put your particular flavor out there, your voice, your perspective on the news or on the products or the culture, the industry that we we all enjoy. So with that in mind, off air a little bit, we were talking about apps, but these guys were also talking about black powder. And I know Dano is interested in talking about first aid. So we've got a couple of different ways we can take it. Since we have an audience out there right now, 14 people watching, one person decided to thumb it down. So there's one son of a bitch who decides to watch instead of going and doing something else with their life. And then we got 7 people who thought it was worth interacting with it. One of them, I'm guessing, is Dead Horse, who's in here. So, that's what we've got going on. But if you want to be part of that conversation that we're having here, then let us know which of those topics you might want to talk about. Got a bunch of green dots over on the gun channel side. Appreciate the people that watch it on the gun channel side. So it's Dan Lincoln over here. NRA sues.
Is an article, and I don't know if we want to talk about this today or maybe another day, about the NRA breaking up with it's media and public relations firm that it's been partnered with for over 30 years, and also is behind NRA TV. they're the ones that actually create it, run it. So people like Colin Noer, I don't know, I'm not pronouncing his name correctly, but they actually don't work for the NRA. They work for this other company that then contracts to the NRA.
I did not know that part of it at all. I knew that I assumed that they worked with a marketing agency. I did not know that they were not employees of NRA, that they were employees of this place.
Yes.
Interesting. So now what's the deal? NRA said screw you, or they told all NRA to screw off?
The NRA is suing them, telling them to go screw off, basically. I don't necessarily have a lot of the details. I kind of threw it out there, hoping that we might read it a little bit before we talked about it. I just heard about this and didn't know if we wanted to talk about this or not. But the firm that they fired, an ad firm basically, was the group's online media arm, and the lawsuit asserts that they have concealed details from the NRA about how the company is spending roughly $40 million that it and its affiliates receive annually from the association, meaning from the NRA to the ad media firm, which is not just NRA TV. That's what I want to emphasize. It's that plus other things. And when I look at this sort of thing, it just kind of illustrates how far off the track the NRA has gotten from its core mission of education and getting people to become interested in shooting and the shooting sports. At least that's how I understand the NRA's core mission.
Yeah, I'm reading that right now, Dano.
I'm trying to read it too, but it's a long article and there's a lot of stuff in it.
So basically, it's it's about accounting that it's they don't believe that there's basically they believe that there's missing funds and misappropriated funds.
So let me ask you a question: is New York Times a valid? I don't pay attention to news enough. Is this a valid source? Is it left? Is it right? Is it moderate?
Well, they're right. The general source. So if anything, I would expect them not to cover it at all, unless somehow it makes the NRA look bad, in which case they would want to cover it.
Hold on. They are going to be pro NRA, in other words, correct?
Well, the New York Times would be against the NRA, not pro.
Oh, so you're saying that they're a left organization?
Correct.
Oh,
unless it makes the NRA look bad, and then that would be a motivation for them to publish it.
Okay, so they're normally a left publication.
They lean left, but not always. Like they've done some right-leaning things before, but they do lean left, yeah.
But they're typically looking for ways to smear the NRA, not promote the NRA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
But this is
I'd
also
like to know what I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to be understanding what they're saying here. Thanks.
And this is coming out of not the news section, but the business section, because money is business sort of a thing. And unfortunately, the Second Amendment has become a business.
I guess.
Well, with the millions and over the decades, the billions that has been spent.
I guess, but I mean, just compared to healthcare or the auto industry, yes, it's a lot of money, but it's not the 40 million that it's spending is, how much do they spend on a lawsuit? For like the drug company.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, some industries are massive. Some are teeny tiny, like the buggy whip industry. Somebody still makes buggy whips.
But
basically, there's industry out there.
But basically, though, the NRA sounds like they spent $40 million with a advertising company out of Colorado, and does it say was that 40 million altogether, or is that like 40 million a year? That doesn't seem like that much, really.
It's lacking in some of the finer grain details, and what your question is a valid one, and I'm reading that and I don't see a clear variation. Is that like a one-time thing, or is that a per year thing?
Because the way it says, The suit asserts that Ackerman has concealed details from the NRA about how the company is spending the roughly $40 million that it and its affiliates receive annually. There we go, from the association. Duh. Because I was going to say is spending. That got me to think. So if I read the whole sentence, that's $40 million annually. So then we say that since Ackerman created NRA TV in 2016, so they're talking about 3 years. So we're talking about $120 million. Does anybody have a chart? Be interesting to have a chart somewhere so we don't have to keep looking for it, like how much gets spent in government or whatever, like on stuff. But $120 million in advertising. I mean, how much does Levi spend on advertising?
Yeah, but we're also talking about a individually subsidized political rights organization and education. I mean, this is not NRA is not a for-profit company. It's not General Motors. It's much more akin to United Way. I mean, it's a sort of a thing. It's
almost unique. I mean, it is. I understand what you're saying. I think it's unique because, number one, they're holding a bunch of money for a bunch of members, which isn't industry money or something else like a lot of people perceive, right? And then they're supposed to be advocates and doing something with that money, right? So the money should be not just effective, but like in a direction that's pro-gun, right? It like doesn't do us any good to give them money and them to plant flowers or something that has nothing to do with guns, right? We want them to spend it on our effort and not on the edges. So I guess, are you saying that, I don't know what you're saying, but basically we're saying that all I'm getting at is that it's $120 million. And I guess I'm saying in the big scheme of things, that's not a ton of money. You're saying, though, that it's because it's the NRA, it's not like inconsequential.
Yeah, because it's coming, $25 at a time from individuals.
The suit creates uncertainty about Mr. North's future at the organization. So if they're saying that somewhere in here it's going to say that Ollie North works for this company and not NRA, and it leaves the future at NRA TV in doubt, given the new something in the Ackerman relationship. So anyway, it says since they created it in 2016, so for those 3 years, it's often been perceived by the public as the voice of the NRA. Well, I don't think the NRA has done anything at all to suggest that it's not the voice of the NRA, right? I mean, they're pretty much paying $40 million a year to have it be the voice of the NRA. So I don't know what they're surprised about or who would be surprised about that, like actual transaction taking place. It has also taken on an apocalyptic tone. So I guess, is the NRA upset that they didn't pay attention to what they were doing with their money?
An apocalyptic tone? Are they talking about like YouTube commercials that the NRA have where Dana Loesch is sitting there talking about
they're referring to either segments of existing shows or shows in their entirety. It varies because it does go in and gives a couple examples. Such as portraying talking trains in the children's show Thomas and Friends and Ku Klux Klan hoods. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, or whether that's just the New York Times saying Ku Klux Klan hats versus a pointy white hat.
I thought I heard something weird here. So, anyway, I got into this and I was trying to figure out, going through it now with the idea that the New York Times is not an ally of the NRA, what they're actually trying to get across here. Like, are they trying to say like the NRA is so irresponsible with their money, or like the NRA is such like buffoons that they're like, paying for what they didn't even want? Or is it like now that they've made this train wreck, they're pointing the blame and trying to get out of the responsibility for their...
I actually didn't read, at least it didn't read to me as a editorial. It read more as a news article, which is what news should be, which is minus those judgments and just sticks with the facts of what's happening.
Well, this has got to be thrilling to listen to us read a thing. So thanks for picking one that's super long, but nobody else jumped in. So I don't know what else to do. I can't even hardly scroll through it. It took me all this time just to scroll through it. It ends with, my mind goes to, are they overcharging us? That's one, he added. Two, are there things charged to us that were not part of the contract? Then, number three, has there been a misallocation of personnel? And I guess that was a board member of the NRA who was dismayed by documents who had not yet been turned over. So, oh, here's something about Wayne. So let's say the suit culminates in the fracturing of more than a 3-decade relationship between Ackerman and the NRA. So for 30 years, they've been media for the NRA, going back to the shaping as such memorable lines as Charleston Heston proclaiming that his gun would have to be pried from his cold, dead hands. So they're suggesting that they're responsible for that. Wayne LaPierre, the longtime chief executive of the NRA, had previously been a steadfast champion of the Ackerman relationship. I think it says something about Wayne's character. Even though he's had a long-term business relationship with the vendor, he's willing to do what is right and necessary for the NRA and its members, said Todd Rathner, a board member of the Rifle Association. That fucking Todd Rathner lives in Tucson. I know that guy. You know that guy. He's the NFA Freedom Alliance. So he's saying that. Here, let me say that again.
Yeah, I mean, I almost start to
Wayne's
laugh.
Character, even though he's had a long term, he's willing to do what's right and necessary for the NRA and its members.
Except recently.
Well, they're saying we did this because he got rid of this crooked relationship with this place that they're trying to ditch. So what do you guys think? Like, the NRA just doesn't like this new NRA TV and they think that blah, blah, blah. So like they're going to just say, oh, we don't like the course that our marketing people took. So they can just blame it on the marketing people and walk away.
After a 30-year business relationship, and it is business at that level, you just don't break up over having questions over things. I would not be surprised at all if it was personalities, because I'm sure there's been other questions over the decades on various things over time, and that it's far more likely that personalities, because people change over time, people come, people go within organizations, and that there was that on a personality level, people didn't quite get along between the two organizations as well as they had in the past, and they had another one of those questions come up, didn't like the answers they got, or they didn't get the answers in a timely manner, or didn't get them at all, and said, fine, you're gonna do that, then I'm gonna poke you in the eye. And they did it with a lawsuit. Because unlike an employee who's been there for a long period of time, they don't, because a lot of times they know each other's secrets, because they've been in those backroom conversations, they've been in those unrecorded meetings. So that's another reason why you just don't want to cut all the relationship loose.
I would think, and I don't know, am I wrong, that this company in Colorado is a prostitute who's being paid $40 million a year by the NRA for the last 30 years, or at least it's been $40 million a year. It grew to $40 million a year.
Well, that's basically
what's to stop Bloomberg from paying these people $40 million a year to say, do whatever the NRA would have never done, or what's going to be the Achilles heel of the NRA, like, because they have an intimate working relationship for 30 years, how the NRA works and thinks. What's to stop Bloomberg from paying those people?
Absolutely nothing. And I would assume that Bloomberg has already paid advisors how to get the best bang for his own buck in regards to getting the guns, paying professional agencies to paint us black, so to speak, or paint the issue black. In regards to reducing our rights. I mean, he's just not going off the top of his chair and saying, I'm throw 20 million here, throw 5 million there. No, he's getting professional advice on where to seed, like Johnny Appleseed, where to drop these seeds in the tune of $1 million here, $1 million there.
Is this the end of the NRA? Are they going to go away?
No.
No, but I think that their political powerhouse is going to weaken and weaken as other organizations like FPC and stuff, GOA and all that take the mantle, and NRA will eventually. And granted, I think this is going to be a long process. I don't think it's going to be like in a couple years. I think this is going to be like a 25-year thing. But eventually, NRA is going to resort back to doing what it was meant to do, which is teach firearm safety, hunter safety,
Yep.
help kids get into shooting, inner city use, stuff like that. And that's what they're good at. That's what they are meant to do. That's what they need to do.
And hopefully spin off the ILA as a independent organization onto itself, rather than just dismantle it entirely. And it'll either succeed on its own because people will support it, or it won't. But if it's doing good things, people will give money to the ILA.
So when the NRA turns into like a Medusa and gets all like slower and slower, and then eventually rock hard, and then it's just sitting there like a statue, and it's dead. Effectively, no longer ceases to be politically viable.
Right.
It's not
there yet. It's getting there very soon.
So I'm saying I'm setting a stage for a question here. So that's what the future is. The NRA has, not with like a big fight and lost, but just because of their own complicity or whatever the word is, like just got slow and slow, and finally just became less and less useful and effective, and their marketing goes away and they just fail and they're just out of it, right? They're not a key player anymore. So in that scenario, we still have it's the real world. So we have the Firearms Policy Coalition, California. We've got Gun Owners of America from Washington, D.C. We got Second Amendment Foundation out of Washington State. We've got a couple of other players. Do we succeed as Second Amendment enthusiasts and activists and whatever, or do we get divided and fail? Is it the politicians have so many adversaries they just can't keep up and they have to surrender to us, or are we just never able to assemble and they just clobber us with some sort of an efficient clobbering?
The key to our future is in our youth. The NRA has really good programs set up. I don't know of any other organization that does more to bring youth into the sport. And I believe that is the future. So I don't know. We definitely don't want to be divided, but we need other people to step up.
Is the NRA gonna say that the bump stock ban position was the fault of the marketing agency?
Well, who knows what they're going to say, but it was definitely the fault of upper management of the NRA.
No matter what, the buck stops with Wayne LaPierre.
Yeah, so. and upper management. I would group them together.
Well, he is. He's in like that appointed place of kingdom in the NRA. He's like the highest level without being like actually appointed or voted or anything. Pants seems to think Ohio will be the 18th constitutional carry state.
Did he give any thoughts as to why?
I guess it's been a fantastic year for constitutional carry. 3 states, South Dakota, Oklahoma, and Ohio, southern neighbor Kentucky, have all adopted permitless carry.
Right. I'm just wondering why he thought it's getting more traction in Ohio.
Well, did I mention that 17 states already have the Constitutional Carry Club, including Ohio's neighbors, West Virginia and Kentucky? And thanks to the efforts of Pro-Gun Representative Ron Hood, the Buckeye State could be the next with the House Bill 178. It would allow permitless carry of deadly weapons of 21-year-old adults, regardless of if they're a resident of Ohio or not. So I guess they have a constitutional carry bill, HB 178, in Ohio.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully they get it. You know, speaking of House bills, there is a bill in the I forget if it's in the Illinois State House or the Illinois State Senate, attempting to water down all of the county. I'm trying to remember the correct phrase used for it in Illinois. The gun sanctuary counties, to water that down to basically non-existence, is simply a token in words, and all the repercussions that would happen if any county actually did not follow either the state or the federal regulations. So, and I simply mention this as you know, as we try to, you know, in some ways it's like a long-term game of chess. You know, it ain't over till it's over, but you know, for every move that we make, you know, they will attempt to counter. You know, whether it's on the federal level or whether it's at your local municipality or county courthouse. And I killed the show.
Yep, I was looking at something else. So where we go from here? Pete saying if that's true, we're changing the NRA.
Well, is it not possible to change the NRA? Can we not vote in a different NRA president if you've been a member for 3 consecutive years or a lifetime member?
You can vote in the, what do you call them? The
57.
And then the board picks the president, right?
The president only does so much, but yes, I mean, it's possible to change the like the who's in the NRA. Depends on how you want to define it. I mean, technically, yes, right. You can help influence who sits there, whether or not you want to acknowledge those people's power once they're sitting there. So, I mean, you can definitely technically change the NRA, like I say, by changing who's sitting there. But like I say, I don't think there's a consensus of opinion on once those people are there, what they're going to be able to do. Again, even if they pick somebody, I mean, I don't think we've had a bad president, right? We had Brownells and Oliver North. Is there somebody else now?
But I think it goes back to I forget what exact year, but the 70s when the major change came through as far as how many members make up the board. And I forget if it's 57 members but it's a very large number. You know, versus the typical 12 to 20 of a typical corporation. And what that does is it makes it extremely hard to vote any actual substantive change through an organization when it requires that many members, to whether it requires a simple majority, depending on what the issue is, or a supermajority. And that depends on what corporation bylaws are.
So the last time that the NRA turned dirty and we took it back, how come we can't perform a similar process? What has changed since then to now that we can't take it back? Because didn't we take it back once already, like in the 70s?
Well, they went from one extreme from another, from too much power in too little hands to too little power in too many hands. I mean, both extremes are negative. Now, I don't know the details of the 70s to be able to speak on it intelligently. Other than just generally extremes of any type generally don't work out well.
I don't remember the exact details either, but from what I do remember, it was basically some kind of filibuster where basically people came into a meeting and then like sat there for like the longest time, right? Wouldn't leave or something. And like they had to give in or something. I'm sure that's like a very, short version. But from what I recall, it was something similar to that, right? Like, I mean, how come members just can't? How come we can't take back our NRA?
Because you have to connect so many independently, as gun owners and as advocates, we tend to be very opinionated in our positions, generally speaking. And now to be an advocate, to be elected to that level, trying to change people's minds, I would imagine would be extremely difficult. And when that's what's required to make severe change, I see that as a very difficult road to hoe. When you don't have to change 3 people's minds, you have to change 26 people's minds to get enough people to vote on your side of the issue. I mean, because it's hard to get that kind of a relationship with 3 people, let alone 26. I'm just throwing out a number when I say 26, but it just makes it that much more difficult. Do any of you guys feel one way or the other in regards to the what I'm referring to as far as the number of board members? I mean, it could be number of legislatures as an example. I mean, in this case, like in our federal government, there's a reason why we have as many federal representatives as we do, and this is the reason why, to make it less likely to happen for them to easily make changes willy-nilly.
Well, that's what I was going to say, I think, is that we want there to be quagmire based on the number of influencers in government, because we don't want it to just change on a dime willy-nilly, right? But the NRA, we hope, is all, I mean, people literally join the organization knowing its value and its goals. So you would hope that everybody on board, I mean, you're barely asking the person to change the steering wheel from left to right. You're not hopefully doing radical shifts in strategy. So you would hope that you wouldn't need that bureaucracy sort of throttle or dwell that the government has, right? You'd kind of want it to be more efficient in an organization because there's not as much, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. It is the largest organization, so to speak. I think it is. And, member base and all that. Maybe you need, I mean, what other organizations are 5 million members big that are trying to still be an organization based on voting boards and stuff? So, I mean, they don't really, they're trying to make an open organization out of 5 million members. I mean, that has to be tough. I don't care what the point of the organization is. It's just got to be a tough task, right? Keep 5 million people on board, happy, aware, and then voting, and then up and up, and keep people participating and paying for the whole thing. I mean, it takes 2 office buildings. I don't really think somebody's sitting there burning $100 bills and laughing every single day.
I'm going to say something that may or may not be obvious, and we may totally disagree. Is that the core issue is although we all believe in gun rights, that's a very general thing. We all believe in freedom. Yes, indeed, that is true. But from the top on down to the individual members who just are an annual member, they pay their $25, whether they do it because they want to or they do it because they're required, because their range that they go to requires them to be a member. All have a different idea as to exactly what does freedom mean. And that's where you get differences like the bump stock ban as to why the NRA was, yeah, okay, and just sat back on their hands.
So I'm looking, so it looks like there's roughly about 80 to 82 board members at any given time for the NRA, roughly. And then some notable, I want to read off just some notable board members of the NRA. Tom Selleck, Ted Nugent, Oliver North, Marion Hammer, Carl Malone, Patricia Clark, Wayne Ross. I mean, like, there's some famous names on this list. And what if we put pressure on them? Like, I never hear anyone say, "Hey, like, let's write Carl Malone and Tom Selleck, and like, let's start going after these board members and putting pressure on them." Because isn't that what we do to our representatives for our?
How do you think that they're going to change the idea of the other members in regards to what does freedom mean? Because I think that's really what it all comes down to. What does freedom mean? Because generally, we all believe in gun rights, generally. We all believe in freedom, generally. But where we differ is what does freedom mean? And that's what separates the gun owners from issue to issue to issue is what does freedom mean? I think that's the core issue right there. And changing someone's idea that's already not just a child, not a young adult, but an established as an adult, successful in life, as to what does freedom mean is like an uphill battle is an understatement.
Well, in a lot of ways, though, that's really, I think a lot of ways, that's the argument, or that's the position that's being lost in society, right? And the underlying one behind the Second Amendment.
Right. I mean, with other issues that our society is going over, it all very frequently has to do with what does freedom mean?
And what's valued as a freedom. I mean, they're obviously misled because they're demanding at the top of their lungs to have their rights removed. And who would do that except for somebody who's completely unaware, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think the vast majority of people, like Dead Horse all mentioned, are all, reputable people. I don't know them personally, but I think they all believe in gun rights. They all believe in freedom. But I think every single one of them, even if they're all from the same industry, have a different idea as to what freedom means.
I have some interesting facts here about the NRA board members.
Sure.
Let's see, 87% are men, 93% are white, 25% are current or former federal, state, or local lawmakers or officials. 22% are current or former law enforcement officers. 30% are current or former members of the military. 24% are lawyers. 12% are entertainers or athletes. 64% are hunters. 71% are sport or competitive shooters. At least 71% were nominated, endorsed, or selected by the NRA's nominating committee. That's some interesting facts about. That's from the bios of the actual board members, not NRA members, but board members.
Right. Something else that I'm just sitting here thinking out loud that I've never heard is, and I've been getting now for a couple of years, the NRA ballot statements. I'm not a lifetime member, but I've been a member consecutively long enough that I'm authorized to vote. And never have I seen either in emails or any other sort of communications these people that are running justify why they should be elected in regards to just the nuts and bolts of that, let alone the specifics of I believe in freedom, and freedom to me means X, Y, and Z. Not just I believe in freedom. That's like I believe people shouldn't starve. Okay.
Gotcha. So a lot of them don't run, right? A lot of them are just appointed, I guess, and win because somebody just votes for them for name recognition, I guess.
Popularity, yeah.
And then some of them do. So I've got I'm trying to arrange a chat with Willis Lee, who's got we talked about him before. He's petitioning. If you follow his Instagram, he's basically does nothing but post endorsements. He's been endorsed by pretty much everybody you've ever heard of. and he's trying to get his name out there so that, again, like you say, they're not household names, they're just regular people. Or like they're lawyers or whatever, like Dead Horse just said, they're just professional people that are, interested enough to do this as their, I don't know, work for the second.
Public service.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there are board of
I mean,
directors.
I don't want to shit on anybody, but then I'm sure there's, we've all met people that collect credentials, collect committee, affiliations and stuff. So I'm sure that there's got to be that part of it.
Oh, absolutely.
But again, that requires some sort of level of awareness of the constituency to be aware of that. And I guess that takes a whole level of involvement with the NRA. That how do you focus on that when a lot of people are willing to just disregard it completely, let it hang? What the hell is this? Dead air? NRA created dead air.
Well, I did my freedom thing, and I mean, to me, it all ends up there as far as at least the aspect that we're talking about. So I really don't have anything else to add at this point.
I think you're asking the wrong question, Dano. Personally, with the
Okay. So you don't necessarily disagree. You just think there's another question that's not being asked, and if so, what is that question?
Yeah, with the what does freedom mean to me, right? I think the question we should be asking is, what does freedom mean to everyone else? That's the whole point. It's not about your freedom. It's about everyone else's freedom. It's about you allowing everyone else to do what they want to do, right?
The question was, who do we elect to the board? And that's where you want to know that individual's position, because they're not going to change it just because the membership feels differently. And when the doors are closed and the microphones get turned off, they're going to vote how they vote. So you want to know what their core beliefs on something like freedom is.
What's a good baseline question, or what's the word? Like Charles Heller will ask politicians the definition of government. It's sort of a gotcha question to see if they actually are paying attention, and if he bases his opinion of them on their response to that. So like you're saying, like as a qualifier, what's your position on freedom? It's sort of like an open-ended, let's see how you answer this.
Well, I would narrow it a little bit as far as just so they can't wiggle out of it. But what does freedom mean to you in regards to firearms specifically? And the word specifically needs to be part of the question. So if they just give generalities, you're saying, well, we said specifically. So could you put a little meat on that so I can better understand what you mean?
But we've been doing that for years with politicians and shit. And then they changed their mind later because, oh, that was before someone got killed, or that was before this tragedy, right? And they changed it. So you can't. People change their minds, dude. And they do it both for personal reasons and political reasons. So, I don't even know if you can if you can even go off of that. And some people just straight up lie to tell people what they want to hear.
I want people, politicians, to have an open mind, i.e., when new information and relevant facts come forward, I want that to be weighed and when pointed in the right direction to make the correct decision based off of that new information. But at least at that point in time, in this case, it's April 16th, and my time zone, it's just after midnight. What's my position on freedom? That's the sort of thing I'm asking. I'm not asking what's your position on freedom a year from now. I mean, these are things that when new information and facts come forward might change. But then when they change, that change is so important because it goes to freedom, it needs to be noted.
I know, but still, something comes to mind when you say all that is President Trump standing, or I guess not even President Trump yet, right? Standing at the NRA. The assault on your Second Amendment rights is over, right? But it wasn't. So I don't even know, man. It has to be in a way to where it's like it's not about what we want. It's not about what I want. It's about what like everyone else wants. It's
Right.
about like I can't interfere with someone else's freedom. That's how we need to make it. And so,
I don't want to get bogged down in an individual, but we know he's a liar. Well, I mean, he has proven it. I mean, it's not like of question.
I think we just give them too much power and we let them make bylaws and laws and regulations that protect them and both the NRA and our government. And we need to like remove that power. Like we need to take some of that power back. And I don't know how to do it. I don't know what the fix is. I just know we need to do it.
When people like George Bush the first say, "Read my lips, no new taxes," it'll come back to haunt them, and it did. And that's why you get them on record to state what they feel and believe. Because if you don't ever ask them on the record, then there'll be nothing to come back when they do something different. But yeah, I don't want to lock them in a box as far as never changing their mind. That's stupid. I mean, I want all my people that, you know, have effect on our lives to have the ability to change their mind based on new information that has been vetted and seems to change the tables on a issue.
And with 3 people, we're going to get more dead air than 10 people.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And just think, Dead Horse, you know, if we have, whether they're minor or medium, I don't know, but, you know, little differences just amongst the 3 of us. Just imagine how many were there? Did you say board members in total?
80 something.
80 to 82 on average.
It
looks like it fluctuates.
Have little variations as to what freedom means. Just imagine a group of that size and trying to get them to say, okay, freedom means X, no exceptions. That would be impossible, or at least a Herculean effort. Too many cooks in the kitchen.
All right. So, I've got an interview coming up with Willis, who's been a board member for a while, and he's on 6 committees, head of 2 of them. What kind of questions should we ask to get more insight, clarification on how the system works or the process? Or so, in other words, if you had the ear of someone with insight, what would you ask?
One might be is if he could walk us through a recent issue or change and how it worked its way through the NRA to become policy. And policy can be as much as coming out and saying we are for something, we are against something, or we say nothing and it's dead silent. Those are 3 possibilities. And have him give an example, and you know, saying it goes to this committee and then they vote yay or nay, and then it goes to the whole board and they vote yay, or whatever the path is. And it has to be 51%, or it has to be a supermajority, or whatever. But, you know, walk us through in general terms the path, just like, you know, the bill on Capitol Hill thing back in the, I forget that was called, they had on TV for those when there were only 3 channels. That little cartoon for kids to understand government.
Schoolhouse Rocks.
Yeah. Yep.
No, this guy sits out on a committee at the NRA.
3 or 6 committees. He's the chair of 2.
What I would like to know, like if I have a hard-hitting question, what I'd really like to know is, have they seen a hit to their income since all the negative publicity lately, and have they really noticed that publicity? Do they even realize that they have a bunch of negative publicity all over social media, all over YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, of NRA, you know, members and stuff ripping up their membership, saying I'm not paying my membership next year. some people saying, "Oh, I'm never going to get an NRA membership now because of some of their Second Amendment, decisions they've made."
And I could ask him for the board, so he's probably going to be more in like ask me my position on stuff. Then I don't know. I'm not sure. I've never talked to him to know how he's like able to answer that one.
I'm just not like, I just haven't heard the NRA talk about like that they've even acknowledged the negative, outcry from their members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like they haven't even paid attention. And I'm wondering, is it like so few of us are like upset that they're like, oh, that's no big deal, or or are they just hoping to like ignore it and it goes away? Like I just kind of want to know what they see, what they're thinking, what's going on right now. Like they have to know that there's military arms channel and just everyone else is just like, they have to know.
If I can add a little something onto that, or maybe separate from that, is if someone calls, sends a physical letter, which I know rarely happens, but they also deal with older people who still use snail mail, or emails, or send something via electronically versus the official NRA addresses. A statement like I'm a current member and I believe that insert name of issue should be we should be for this. How do those statements get processed from the clerk that receives it and where does it go from there?
I mean, I don't know if he's going to know the answer to that one. I'll show you his bio here. So, member of the NRA. What?
Sorry, go ahead.
Member of the NRA Board of Directors for 2018 and 19. He serves on 6 NRA committees. The NRA Outreach Committee with co-chairman Alan West, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, co-chairman of the Collegiate Programs Committee. He serves on the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, the Grassroots Development Committee, the Legislative Policy Committee, and the Federal Affairs Subcommittee. He was co-chairman of the Trump-Pence Second Amendment Coalition Leadership Team. He was one of the very few NRA board members appointed to an NRA committee. Willis was one of the very few non-NRA board members appointed to an NRA committee. The first from Hawaii, appointed to an NRA committee, serving on the Urban Affairs Committee in 2015. 16, he was the first from Hawaii to be nominated for the board of directors, and he filled a vacancy on the board in 2017. And then he served on the Military and Veteran Affairs Committee and the renamed Outreach Committee. 17, he became the first from Hawaii to gain a ballot access through petition, and then the first elected to the NRA Board of Directors, I guess, from Hawaii. And then in 17 and 18, he served on 5 committees. So his first time around, he filled in a term, it looks like, right? And fit into 2 committees, and then he went to 5 committees, now he's on 6. So is that indicative of board members, I wonder? Like if we were to look at biographies of those 80 people, are they all on multiple committees, or is he just really into it? Let's see. I don't know if that helps give you any insight into what kind of questions he might be answered. But I'm saying, if he's in these 6 committees, I mean, I don't know if he's familiar with the process of, what did you say, when an email goes in or to the clerk, like what process it goes to somebody. I don't know if he's going to know that.
Well, why? I'd be disappointed if he didn't, only because he's been there long enough that if he is not aware of how information either may or may not be getting filtered before he hears it, that's kind of a thing.
I don't know, Ted Orris, you think that's a thing in a thing with 5 million members, that any human in the planet could call in and ask a question, like that one of the 80 board members is going to, I mean, do you think they sit him down and walk him through that? Or like he would have just taken the initiative to go up and learn the process of how a phone call comes in? Or or it's like
Oh, I'm
that.
referring
I
to-
think it just probably depends on how long they've been there. I'm sure there's some people like the celebrities like Carl Malone or something. You call him up, he's not going to know, right?
Yeah.
But some of the guys who are really into it, I'm sure some of them know, but some of them are just there as faces, right? They're just figureheads. So
Yeah.
you
And when
just have to get the right guy.
I was only referring to the issue and the position of the caller, the emailer, etc. I mean, because they got to cut it down so that at least somebody is tallying these things. These are the issue people are calling about, and these are the positions they've taken on those issues. And this is how many people numerically. So they have an idea if only one person called or 5,000 people called. Because I know that's exactly what happens at my state. With my
and then there's people on the board there like Barrett, right? Barrett Firearms, Ronnie Barrett. He's on the board, right? So is he gonna know how a call comes in and all that, like, and where that goes to? Like, I doubt it.
It's not how a call comes in. It's
Or
when,
where it goes. Yeah, like, is he even going to hear about it? Like anyone's call ever? Like, I
it's
doubt
not
it.
about the individual call. It's about the trend. It's a trend analysis. Is our membership is telling us X, Y, and Z. That's what I'm referring to. Not. I mean, I'm not being ridiculous to the point of, oh, did you know that Jim Jones called in and on Tuesday morning at 8:32 and he said, no, I'm not referring to that level at all.
I'm saying on any level, I doubt some of those guys are even going to be able to tell you how anything works there.
Oh,
Yeah, if you're talking like procedures and infrastructure, I don't even know if that's. I don't know of any organization that. I mean, that unless it's your business, why would you? Like I said, like maybe I don't know if it's a secret inside in the building, but why would everybody know everybody's? I mean, that's like saying you don't know how the janitor like does his vacuuming. Like all you'd have to do is watch them. Like maybe you didn't watch them. I just don't see them doing like hey, everybody, all 80 of you on the board, watch this introduction VHS tape. You know, and part of it is when a person calls, here's how it goes through. I think they just get more like, here's the things that we want you to do. And then here's a big pile of papers on their desk.
But do they know? And the answer may be no, they don't know.
I mean, I guess I could ask him. I mean, it doesn't cost nothing to ask the guy. I'm just saying he's petitioning for his, what do you call it? What's the word when you're running for office?
But
He's campaigning for his position, so I just don't know if, he wants me to give him some idea of what we're going to talk about. If I'm like, yeah, I'd like you to talk about the infrastructure and the procedure of when people complain about the NRA.
Well, it's not when
they like, oh, I can't wait to talk about that.
Let's spend an hour doing that. In their positions. Do they hear that and how's the process in general of information flowing from the membership positions and issues to the members? Now that could be as simple as, oh, well, let me give you an example, Pete. If somebody calls in, Susan has a spreadsheet and she has a list of issues and she categorizes that call. And then she categorizes the for or against that particular issue. And then there's a miscellaneous for things that don't fit well in any particular case. And then each meeting that's summarized in a handout. Okay.
You've been to the building. You've seen the picture of the building before?
I believe so. It was one of the pictures that you took.
So this is the building. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stories or something. 6 stories maybe. Mm-hmm. And then 2 wings. I don't know if everybody knows Susan and how she spends. I just don't know. I'll ask him. I don't know if I want to ask him this kind of stuff. The NRA show is the 29th of this month, 27th. So it's not this next weekend, but the weekend after, the 27th. And that's when people are voting. And right now I'm having to schedule because he's doing tons of, I guess, getting ready. He said with the the religious holiday stuff this week, and then getting ready to travel. And then I can't imagine what else he's doing to, like, do whatever he can to campaign.
I mean, what other sort of question would tell us whether a representative is actually in touch with the membership or not? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because if they're not in touch, that's kind of a flag. And I don't mean that particular guy. I just mean the members in general. Another thing would be, if there is a brand new member, when they come to the board, is there a meeting the day before for new board members so they can become familiarized with how the NRA works in regards to its relationship with the individuals that support the organization directly as individuals, as well as the services that they perform out in the field and the various arms of the I'm going to call it a business or organization, the different arms of the organization and how that works together.
Well, we spent a heck of a lot of time on those 2 questions, so nobody else even gave any other questions. So we'll see if the guy has time. I'm not no advocate for NRA period, let alone, I mean, he's introduced to him by Cheryl Todd, so I'm guessing he's a good dude. Cheryl's.
The question I guess I would be hesitant to ask would be a specific question like where do you sit on the bump stock ban, and depending on his answer, and what do you do to either stop or promote this? I mean, those are the sorts of things I would not ask.
Look, seriously, that's one of the reasons that I'm like, I'm not an interviewer, because I don't have any impartiality at all, because that's the only question I care about. And I don't know if he's even going to know about it either. But again, I don't know if that's, like you say, I don't know when you're supposed to ask them after. I mean, I'm not really interested in helping an individual. I don't know the guy. I mean, I'd like to get questions from him. I do kind of wish it wasn't so immediate to the campaign or whatever, to his election.
Right.
Because I just have general questions like what you guys asked. I don't really.
Well, I think you might also be able to tell him, and this may put him more at ease, that, I'm willing to put the publicizing this interview and putting it out there till after the election, your election, so that you don't have to be concerned in your answers in regards to something you may have misspoken or want to reword or whatever.
Well, then there's absolutely no reason to do it now. It would be more appropriate to do it later. Because then I guess
it's a question of, and I'm sure you're probably going to say both, but are you doing it to interview him specifically, or are you doing it to give us a better idea as to an insight into the NRA itself?
Oh, that's a good question. Mostly the NRA side of it, but as far as like for the election, I don't even know how many people that listen to this show are voting. I'm going to ask right now. There's 21 people watching this show. Let's see how many of them say if they're voting members, yes or no. So I don't really know if he'll get much influence other than like practice talking to somebody. I guess if I did it on my big YouTube channel, he might get more reach than, doing it on this show. But like I say, I don't know the guy other than I was introduced to him by Cheryl Todd, and I've seen him at every single pro-gun thing I've ever been to. He's been there. He goes to, other things too. So I don't know what his deal is. I mean, he's definitely in the game.
I mean, since you don't know him, I suppose that's the other way, part of, getting off of, you don't have to ask specific questions that put him on the spot.
But I also don't have to bother him while he's trying to do a campaign, whatever. He's obviously a big part of his deal is being a board member, and I don't need to bug him and waste his time, basically.
Right. Because if you're just asking about, what is it like to be a board member, and and things associated with that, well, those are all basically softball questions for him. They're going to be easy for him to answer. They're not going to be like putting him on the spot. The answer may be, yeah, on day one, they kind of throw you to the deep end of the pool and you've got to catch up quick or you'll drown. I mean, well, that's one answer. And if it's the correct answer, that's what we need to know.
So
we have realistic expectations of the people we vote in.
We got quite a few responses, thanks, and only one that said they've got a ballot. Said Dano said you got a ballot. I probably got a ballot somewhere, but I quit paying, so I don't know where I'm at. I mean, I get threatening emails or the threatening letters about how my thing's going to expire, but I don't know if one of those is a ballot. One of them might be.
I get letters telling me that I'm about to be bounced out following from like 2 weeks after I renew for the next 11 and a half months.
Yeah. I think Pants is saying you got to be a member for 5 years consecutively. I think that's it.
Yeah, because I think last year was the first year that I was able to vote because I joined to take the because I told it when we've gone through training stuff in the past, the very first non-military class I ever took was NRA Basic Pistol, and they required you to be a member to take the class. So
the Seven Wonders is saying, does the board actually have any power to influence the ILA pursuits? So that'd be the kind of question, because even if he's not on a committee, he might know what the other committees are. But I don't believe the what do you call them, the board gets together ever, except for maybe at the national meeting. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Like the committees probably get together at some point, I guess, or maybe they do it virtually, unless they're idiots.
If it works like government, which is an oxymoron, when the committee makes a decision, it has to bring it before the full board to vote on it to either make it so or to take it down. Or so they'd have to meet more than once a year. I mean, if they're going to actually make changes in a timely fashion.
But I'm saying not the whole board, the committees, I'm sure. But they're not going to get all 80 people together, except for maybe like some kind of newsletter that goes out and says vote on this or something. You know what I mean?
It might be quarterly.
I don't know.
I can't imagine.
That could be a question. How often does the board get together, and how often do committees get together?
I mean, in the business world, there's variation depending on how the corporation is written. I mean, I've seen it anywhere from monthly to quarterly.
Well, the difference when everybody lives in the town and they go to the same office every day, and once a month they set a different office built for them. But you know what I mean.
Board members are not employed by the companies I'm referring to. The CEO is the CFO is. Positions like that are hired by the company, but board members are typically not employed by the company. They're a doctor. They're something else in life.
All right.
Traditionally, or they're a big investor if it's a for-profit company. They get 5% of the company. That'll put them on the board.
Well, like I say, that could be a question to ask. And if he says that they meet up every month in Washington, D.C. as a board, then I'll go, wow, that's a lot of wasted money to bring 80 people to Washington, D.C. every month. That would be a ridiculous waste of money in a world where we can all sit around on the internet like this anytime we want.
And they very well may meet, virtually more often, but physically less often.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope they're not all hopping on jet planes.
Because they're not paying for it if they are. That's what I'm saying. That's NRA money, but I don't think they're doing that. That would be crazy.
Yeah, but video conferencing, especially in the business world, has been around for a long time for that exact reason.
And it seems like voting every year would be kind of a pain, but I guess that's part of the infrastructure or the gears to make it accountable. Makes votes have consequences. All right, well, we got to let it hit air and due to get some participation. There's 20 people watching. Appreciate that. I don't know, is there anything else we want to chat about tonight?
No, I don't got nothing.
Well, I'm sure it only matters to me, but a week from today, I will be taking my first medical class, and not as in going to a doctor kind of a medical class, but actually to help render first aid in whether it be a car accident, a shooting. I'm driving by and some farmer's had an accident in his field with his equipment and somebody's terribly hurt, that sort of thing. And it'll be step one of that. That's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I've you know, the shiny glaze of the tactical classes has kind of steered me off my initial course. So I ended up taking more of those classes than I necessarily originally intended, as I wanted to actually this to be like my third class, but it ended up being like my fifth or sixth class. I forget how many I've taken now, maybe my seventh class, I forget. But I'll be taking that at Shawnee Tactical. So if you're in extreme southern Illinois, right next to the prison. No, it's not actually right next to the prison, but in what town is that in? Not that anybody cares. Anyway, so I'll be taking that a week from today.
Oh, on a weekday. How long is it? A one day?
It's a 1 day, 8-hour class.
Marion?
Marion, yes, that's it. Where one of our state prisons is. Yeah, there's a sign down there because when I was going to took those classes down in Camden, there's even if you didn't see a sign for Marion, there are signs that say "Do not pick up hitchhikers, maybe prisoners, maybe escaped prisoners."
Oh, you don't get those signs very much. Out here in the West, that happens quite a bit. You'll drive down the road because the prisons will be out of sight off the side of the road somewhere, but you'll know because of those signs you're talking about.
Right. Warning, warning.
Get the big Supermaxes out here that are like, you barely see them from the road. But, you know, they're just kind of out in the middle of the desert. So even if they do get out, like, good luck. They're just walking through desert.
Right. I you know, granted, this is way off topic, but I would imagine the only way out other than earning your way out is, you know, going out the front door with, you know, forged paperwork and that sort of thing, because you ain't busting out of those places. And even if you do, unless you got some sort of water system that somebody planted out there for you, you're not going to make it.
Well, that's the thing. I don't even think you could sneak up to them because they're just all in the middle of the desert. So all those guards and stuff, you know, if they don't have some kind of radar to know if somebody's walking up, you know, they just see them or have heat or something. Like you just desert, like right. desert, like sand desert. So anyway, you were talking earlier though about the different types of classes. So
now
is tactical, I guess.
Well, they actually, this particular class is called Everyday Medic, because it's targeted towards not just things that could go wrong at the range. It's things that could go wrong. There's a traffic accident. As I mentioned, you're driving by and somebody hit a deer and they're actually injured in the car somehow, you know, via that, or somebody was working on a house and put a nail through their arm or something. I mean, things that happen in everyday life that are serious, in addition to the self-defense possible injuries that we could incur in ourselves or in people around us, or we could come upon somebody. Let's say, you know, something happens at a mall or a school and that person has just left. You just got there. You can make the difference between a person making it and not. When there's lots of people to triage and lots of people to take care of, all right now.
So it says class begins at 8 a.m., lasts till 5, includes 2 first aid kits. So life happens, or it says things happen, life intrudes in your routine, everyday routine, accidents happen at homework, blah, 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 active shooters, terrorists, active murderers, terrorists, simply putting a hand through a plate glass window. Medical emergencies happen all around during the whatever, blah, blah, blah. Everyday medic is designed to give you, the everyday person, regardless of background, the proper tools and mindset to provide emergency care while awaiting higher levels of care. We will teach you basic anatomy, common injuries and ailments, the proper basic treatment for these conditions. We'll teach you how to assemble a basic first aid kit, provide you with one to train with and to take home. So a second one to take home. Our instructor provides with current standards of care and guidelines established by TCCC. This course is not a license or certification to practice. However, it will teach you some techniques and procedures that can mean the difference between life and death. We take training and education seriously. Our staff are all veterans, have decades of practice in their areas of expertise. We teach what has been proven effective in arenas throughout the world. Our training is second to none. And they're going to give you a lunch and an open, or no, you need to bring lunch and an open mind.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it.
So what were you saying about the different levels or whatever?
Oh, in regards, as an example, a couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago, because I think it just expired, I went and took a Red Cross first aid class. And I was very disappointed in the class. I would call it a very basic entry-level class. Everyone in that class was required to take it except for me. As an example, people who work in schools are often required to have first aid certifications. 911 operators are required to have certain certifications. I was there for the knowledge, not the certification. I got certified anyway, but that's just that has nothing to do with the point I'm talking about. But they did not go into detail in regards to severe injuries, life-threatening injuries, things where, you know, how do I get them from a second afterwards until when the real professionals arrive that will take over? How can I help in that role? And that's what they did not cover. And I was very unhappy with it. Now, they offer a lot of different classes. Some classes you have to be of a certain emergency responder sort of thing to be eligible to take. So I'm sure that stuff is covered in some of their stuff, but certainly not in their first aid class. It's more of boo-boos, bruises, and a possible broken arm, and you know how to do a do just the very limited basics. Somebody's injured their arm and you need to put it in a sling. How can you do an impromptu sling?
So we're talking Red Cross, right?
Yes.
Their website's goofy, but so they've got theirs broken down into first aid, CPR, AED, which is emergency defibrillator, BLS, basic life support, or CPR for healthcare, which is probably different than regular person because they're going to have gear, they're going to have kit, you know,
right,
facility or whatever, and you just do CPR differently when you're sitting on a stretcher in a place, especially when there's like an emergency room down the hallway. Then you got babysitting and childcare. Obviously, it's a little bit different because they focus on little babies and stuff. Swimming and water safety is like basically probably an intro for like scouts and stuff into lifeguarding. Then they have a full lifeguarding one. They've got CNA training and testing. What is that? Certified nursing assistant?
Yes.
Then instructor training and online only. So I'm going to go to first aid.
Yeah, mine included the first aid, CPR, and the AED.
Well, I'm going to see if their first aid expands into more than just first aid, because that's not a lot of what they used to have. A lot more than that, I guess I should say. So if we go down into first aid, you got adult first aid, bloodborne pathogens training, which probably be for like people that work in a healthcare. You got adult and pediatric first aid. Then you got child and baby first aid, anaphylactic and epinephrine. So sticking an injector in. When I was an EMT, we couldn't do that. That was paramedic still. This was like a year later, they were going to let EMTs do that. So now they're letting regular people do it with a little Red Cross course. Yeah, where'd it go? And then whatever they're doing is kid CPR or something. So yeah, that's not very many classes at all. Is that the only classes they even have anymore?
I think you have to go to a different website to get to some of their more I'm going to call it professional level type stuff.
Yeah, do you have something like that?
I don't have it readily available. I just remember seeing it.
Well, I'm on the redcross.org. Take a class. Let me get rid of all this. Their site is shitty.
But something else that I have not taken, but I've heard lots of good things about, as well as the cost goes from free to very low cost, and that's a class called Stop the Bleed. It's a non-for-profit organization in the United States, and it's more active in some states than others. But they're typically offered like at junior colleges. They'll have a Saturday class or a Wednesday evening class or something like that, and that is specifically on gunshot wounds, severe lacerations, stopping the bleeding. It's not about, if it's bleeding's not involved, it's not about it. So it's a good, you want to have, the knowledge as well as a couple of simple tools for if there is a shooting in your area. That would be a great class to take.
So we'll take a look at that one here in a second. So this one is the one I was looking for, and I just had to go to the internet and search specifically for it. So I don't know where it is. It's still on their site, but I don't know where it is. Yeah. Get out of there. So it's called Wilderness and Remote First Aid Course. So it's in here with first aid for coaches. So it says designed for scouts and scout leaders, outdoor enthusiasts, and anyone who works or spends time in remote environments. This course teaches advanced skills to be used in emergencies when help from professional responders may be far away. Based on Boy Scouts of America Wilderness First Aid Curriculum and Doctrine Guidelines, this course aligns with OSHA's best practices for workplace first aid training programs. You got to be 14 and already have a CPR. You get a 2-year certificate from it, and then it's 16 hours. You're going to get primary and secondary assessments, head, brain, neck, and spinal injuries, including probably, and for sure, splinting and immobilizing. You got heat-related emergencies, so everything from hypothermia to hypothermia. Then they got hypothermia separate. Altitude-related illnesses, so climbing up and down stuff, allergies and anaphylactics, all the stuff you get bit and sniff and rub on. You got burns, then you got bone and joint injuries, so falling off of stuff and breaking stuff. Then wounds and wound infection, which would be your punctures and perforations and lacerations and stuff like that. So this is the one I'd recommend. You can get their guide. Let's see. How do you figure out how much the cost is or how to find one? Maybe, I guess you have to find a class, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how to find a class here. Great. So maybe they don't even offer it anymore. Maybe it's just telling about what they used to have or something. But this would be what I'd recommend, Wilderness First Aid.
Yeah, that certainly looks like a very thorough class. It looks like it's basically a 2-day class, being 16 hours. And
the kind of insight you'll get there is like, where your boundaries are at a more like like an adult level, like not like assuming there's a paramedic on the way or around the corner. Where are your, where your boundaries? Where do you need to do stuff, and where do you still not touch anything?
Mm-hmm.
So you type in "Stop the Bleed" and you get to bleedingcontrol.org. Hey, is this it?
Yeah, that looks like it.
Yeah. So about it, live in a world where blah 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 blah, massive bleeding from any cause, but particularly for, oh my goodness, blah 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 is delayed. So there's a whole nother topic, right? So bleeding from any cause, but particularly from an active murderer or explosive event where a response is delayed, can result in death. So right there, come on. They're suggesting right there, but because of whenever there's a violent situation nowadays and emergency rescue is not going to find you in time because they're going to be held back by law enforcement, you are going to bleed out. That's what that sentence says right there.
Mhm.
Because of the current procedures and the way that they react to violence, no longer do emergency people run in and help you. No longer are people tasked with doing that first. Instead, they wait and you bleed out. So instead, now as a victim, you need to either save yourself or as standing next to a victim, help everybody else. And whatever. I mean, it's just messed up that they're exploiting situations like this.
I mean, it's worded a little harshly, but it is fact.
Yeah, so it's not incorrect. But the chances that you're going to ever encounter something like this compared to everything you talked about, plate glass, automobile, hammer, falling downstairs, a fence that's goofy, a thing that falls on you or whatever, something falls out of a vehicle, those are a million times more likely. But whatever, they're focused on this for whatever reason right now. Similar to how the general public learns and performs CPR, the public must learn proper bleeding control techniques, including how to use their hands, dressings, and tourniquets. Wow, that's weird. Victims can quickly die from uncontrolled bleeding within 5 to 10 minutes, which I guess is true, but you can bleed out way faster than that, actually. However, anyone in the scene can act as an immediate responder and save lives if they know what to do. Bleedingcontrol.org supports Barack Obama's policy directive for national preparedness. So this was instigated by Obama, which targets preparedness and a shared responsibility of the government, the private and nonprofit sectors, and individual citizens. Isn't that nice that we also share the responsibility?
Considering the government is us.
And I think pretty much private and nonprofit sectors are us too, but that's okay. Let's all stop the bleeding. It's an initiative of the American College of Surgeons and some guy, and contains diagrams, news, videos, and other resources contributed by a variety of other private blah, 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 to help prepare you in an event you are witness to one of these unspeakable events. Why don't you fuck off? More like if you see people bleeding, you can help them. Our shared goal is to provide you with man, this is so difficult to read. I've never read this one. Maybe there's another Stop the Bleed.
It's like a political statement because it's politically
because of guns, you're probably going to bleed. And since there's no way to stop it because a gun happened, then here's maybe how you might be able to save yourself or your child. Man.
It's worded badly, incredibly badly, but...
So that's about us. But what we're talking about is, I guess, a set of resources, instructional aids, and clinics, workshops, free materials, and instructors that go around and offer these all kinds of places, right? Like schools or gun shops or ranges.
High schools, junior colleges, church basements. I mean, anywhere. I've seen all sorts of locations.
And I guess they also just have the information available here. So, it's really easy to stop a bleed. For the most part, just being quick and knowing what you're doing is all it takes. And, a couple of materials will make it easier or cleaner. But we're designed to not die. So just knowing how to facilitate a body to not kill itself or to bleed out, it's pretty simple. So that's all there is to it. It's just talking a little bit about applying pressure and, like Dana was saying, triage of figuring out what's going on quickly, and then reacting quickly when it's necessary. And then that's, I guess, a bit of a quick run through of it, but this was not the best resource because I've been to something else one time where it was more like a bunch of classes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one from the DHS, Stop the Bleed. So Homeland Security / Stop the Bleed. I want to take a course.
Well, what was the name of the other one?
The other one was some website developed by somebody. What probably happened is the government said, hey, if you want to do Stop the Bleed, we give out grants. So we probably got like 1 billion different people trying to do Stop the Bleed resources because they got them for free. But you can go to this email if you want to get involved. I want to take a course. If you'd like to take a course, contact your local public health department. So they're not going to help you from the DHS. I'm just going to tell you.
It's a worthless website then.
Yeah, it's just telling you to go to your local. So it's government. It's a bunch of crap. But basically the concept is everybody figured out how to do CPR, which is great. Airway breathing, circulation is your ABCs. So you have to have an airway open, and then you got to be breathing, right? So choking or something obstructing your airway, snot, vomit, blood, right? Something that's stopping your airway, you got to get rid of that first. Now, let's say you remove something obstructing the airway, big chunk of food, big chunk of meat, right? It's usually a big chunk of meat. You get that out of there, and now you got to get them breathing again. So airway breathing, so ABC, right? Breathing, you get them doing chest compressions, and now they're breathing again. You just have to stimulate the lungs, once they've kind of stopped, to kick them back in. And then bleeding, because you're going to die if you aren't breathing, and then you'll bleed out pretty quick. So, if it's just a normal situation, you're not getting shot in the pelvis or something like in a war zone or something, then for the most part, bleeding is not going to kill you. Every once in a while, something jabs you in a place that can kill you really quick, but 99% of the time, people get jabbed someplace that ain't going to kill you, or we're kind of designed to not get jabbed real easy. We've grown up with each other and animals with horns and stuff, so we've kind of, become a hardy critter that doesn't pop real easy. But that's what Stop the Bleed is all about. People know how to do CPR, and that's evolved from really complicated procedures, actually. When I first was a little kid, I think I went to my first CPR classes as a Cub Scout. So I probably learned CPR, sometime before, what is it, 6th grade or something like that when you're a little kid. And, I don't know how many CPR classes I've been to, a lot. And it has definitely changed over the years, right? So it's evolved, and they've figured out over the time that by getting people out there aware of getting their people breathing again, that they save a lot of lives, and that people being more confident, are able to do other things. So I'm guessing they figured everybody's ready for the next step, and that's don't let people bleed out all over the place, because there's probably a lot of crap information out there when you watch a movie. I mean, can you imagine if you just only watched movies, what you might do to somebody who's bleeding?
Yeah, something that just came to mind as far as like just the Stop the Bleed concept is bringing it out to the masses is no different, at least in my mind, than allowing for police officers to carry Narcan with them, which for those that aren't familiar with, that is something that if somebody has overdosed on heroin or on a couple other drugs, opioids primarily, it will immediately counter the effect of that and saves lives. And allowing police officers to administer that, because they are often the first ones to find a body that's non-responsive, because that person may not make it till the EMTs arrive. Especially in urban environments, that has had a major effect on saving lives. And I just look at it as the next step of bringing medical procedures up, figuring out a way on how can we get these down to the true first responders, i.e. the people that discover the people in need, whether that's the police or whether that's me and you, and give them the help that they might need. So,
well, it only really takes somebody who's gets poked or falls, whatever happens to somebody who's now bleeding, and is at risk of bleeding out. It requires somebody to be around them or within about 3 minutes of them who can get yelled at or yelled for, called over, enough commotion that they investigate. And then, what I'm saying? So yeah, the amount of, you don't have to have everybody know it. You just have to have enough people so that there's enough people distributed that, about every 3 minutes away from each other, somebody knows something about it.
right.
And even somebody that isn't physically able might be able to walk somebody, because we're only talking about putting pressure. I mean, we're literally talking about idiot stuff here. It's just have to have the common concept. You don't have to be a physician by any means. It's way easier than CPR, which I guess is probably why it was never even brought up before, because it was just sort of like people knew. I think about it though, back in the day when you would actually do stuff for a living, use a shovel, or have to walk around and do something, or move your arms around and hold things in your hands, people were getting jabbed and cut and smushed all the time, right? So they were just more familiar with bleeding.
Yeah.
And you knew, if I smushed my finger and I put pressure on it, I quit bleeding. And then, guess what? If I cut my arm really big, same thing. It's not that difficult to figure out how to quit bleeding, unless you've never bled before, right?
Right.
So maybe you're just too soft. Maybe part of school, you have to get knifed, shivved.
Well, our society has also changed. I think part of that change was when we shifted from an agrarian agriculture culture to more of an urban culture. Because when people were getting hurt out on the farms back in the day, and you were lucky if you had one doctor per county, that a doctor was hours away at best. That mom, dad, grandpa, somebody in the family farm had to know how to deal with what happens when there's one finger not there.
Yeah.
Because it got stuck in a machine or something.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like it just was a more normal thing, so it wasn't a completely unfamiliar thing.
Right. And, kids growing up in that situation see what grandma did, when Uncle Bob came in, missing a finger.
Well, and from 1917 up until last year, we had the Boy Scouts teaching a whole bunch of kids how to stop bleeding from whenever they were little kids.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so we were talking a bit about those levels of classes, but I don't know if that accomplished what you were trying to talk about or not.
Well, I think, we started with the very basic. We started with things that are nationally available and what they can offer and their roots. And we talked about some of the, and that wilderness medical, which is what I call it, I forget what it was actually called, is a good example of what I'll call, for the civilian that's not doing this for a job, a good example of an upper tier type thing. Because again, whether it's because you're out in a national park or whether it was 1850 and the doctor was at best 5 hours away, you are, the first responder.
Now, have you ever heard of NOLS?
No, I have not.
National Outdoor Leadership School. Let's see. History. So NOLS has been around for a while. Our school began in a small canyon in Sinks Canyon, Wyoming. Neat. In 1965 as NOLS. At that time, we were primarily an outdoor skills school in the mountain ranges, what it's meant to teach leadership in the backcountry. Today, a multifaceted wilderness school that supports thousands of students each year all over the world, nurturing leaders on how to live responsibly in the wilderness and teach others to do the same. Once we evolved to better accomplish, we've been offering more diverse courses, blah, blah, blah. So since 1965, they've been offering courses specifically on dealing with stuff in the outdoors. And this is everything from medicine to like probably guides, I guess you could say, to taking, when you do like environmental or nature kind of, what do you call, like studies or something, like, they'll take people up to do that kind of stuff. Anyway, so when we go to their wilderness medicine one, this is going to be for people out in the middle of nowhere. So this is going to be the Red Cross wilderness thing on steroids, probably. So let's see if it tells us how much it costs. Yeah, it doesn't even tell you. So it's one of them kind of things, right? So see if it talks about what they're going to do. The core curriculum: prevention, assessment, treatment in a remote and austere settings, perform patient assessment, understand principles for prevention of wilderness medicine, treat injuries, illnesses, and environmental problems, perform medical and rescue skills, make decisions about the need for emergency evacuation. That's kind of generic, but I would say this is probably going to be your level up to go into like a normal school and taking a wilderness EMT, which would be like a guy who sits on a helicopter and goes out, for the state or for the city or for the county or something, and actually, as a paramedic or an EMT in a helicopter. This would be like your next level before that. But I don't know how to figure out what do you think the price would be? Post? No. And more? Oh, you might have to take a class before you take this one, maybe? I don't know. So anyway, I figured I'd throw that one out there because I knew they had a wilderness medicine one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, and depending on where you go, some places will have prerequisites if it's a higher level class. Some will roll that prerequisite class into the main class, so it's a soup to nuts, but instead of being a 2-day class, it's now a 4-day class or a 5-day class.
Ah, here we go. So you've got your wilderness first aid, your wilderness first responder, recertification, wilderness EMT, right? Which is for real, $4,000, 200 hours. Wilderness first responder recert, wilderness upgrade for medical professionals. So if you're already an EMT or something, upgrade to wilderness. Wilderness advanced first aid. Oh, see, they got a whole bunch of stuff in here for you. So this is going to range from 160 for 16 hours ish, all the way up to thousands of dollars. Some of these are wilderness medicine and rescue semester is 17 grand.
And $150 is cheap.
Yeah, and I would assume that's going to be a class that's worth $150. You got to get used to eating granola. People that go to Knowles ain't kidding around. They're like definitely your Birkenstocks and your North Face kind of people.
Yeah, because I'm using my measuring stick of cost is like a gun class. There's a local.
But look at these. It says from 160, but it's more realistically 245 everywhere. It looks like a lot of these are handled in REI schools and then at Mount St. Helens. So you got Chicago, Illinois on April 20th. Oh, man, you just missed this one, Dana. At an REI outdoor school. I can get to the details. Let's see if they got another one. Ohio, Phoenix, and then Minnesota. And then they have 298 dates in 2020 already. So let's see what you missed here.
Just wanted to focus on life and things I've missed while living it.
Oh, you have to sign a liability release. Nice. I mean, I don't know how hardcore it can be at an REI store, though. But it's an REI outdoor school in Chicago. That's all it tells you. Is there more than one REI in Chicago?
Well, the one I know of is at Woodfield. And, of course, you got the forest preserves. So I imagine that they will use that for the indoor classroom, but they'd also go out to the forest preserves.
Oh, that probably is true.
I don't know. Yeah, but they're still available.
You can get a half a semester credit at Western State Colorado University or at Utah University. Dead horse.
He's passed out by this point.
Yep. Minimum age 16, REI Outdoor School, Chicago. That's all it says. But interesting. So $245 if you're an REI member and $75 if you're not a member. I don't know how much it costs to be a member of REI. Here's their course outline. Morning patient, so it's day 1, day 2. Okay, oh, it's not very big. Damn, it's just one page. So patient assessment is all morning. Emergency evacuation, spine, head, shock, wilderness wound, all afternoon. More wilderness wound, muscular skeletal injury, and heat illnesses. And then in the afternoon, cold, lightning, altitude illness, chest pain, shortness of breath, and anaphylaxis. Altered mental status. Huh.
Question, it kind of goes to the anaphylactic shock thing, is if somebody's having an allergic reaction and they tell you they're not allergic to Benadryl, and assuming that they're still able to speak, what's your thoughts on having them take a dose of Benadryl?
Oh, I'm not a doctor, so I leave it up to people who have issues to know what their issues are, or hopefully have somebody standing next to them, or to have told somebody before. So in my experience from being in scouts and stuff, and over the years just doing things, like somebody who's got something will let everybody else know, or like tell somebody, hey, here's where my stick is and when to stick me, or something like that. So I depend on those people to speak up. If you're just talking like walk up upon somebody, I'm too much of an EMT. There's no way I'm putting a pill in anybody's mouth.
Yeah. I'm not talking about if somebody's unconscious. I'm talking about if they can speak to you and you ask them.
Even then, you can't. As an EMT, you're never going to touch medicine because somebody might be crazy. You don't know. You're like, oh, give me a pill. I need a pill. Like, okay, I'm poisoned now.
I'm thinking like a bee sting, and they're actually really allergic to bee, and they're starting to. You can see that the symptomology seems to fit, and they're speaking, but it won't be long if it keeps progressing. And you ask them the appropriate questions.
Most everybody who's allergic to bees or something knows that, and they're carrying something. So, I mean, if they have it with them, yes. I mean, I don't carry around Benadryl to give other people or nothing, though. But I don't know the actual answer you're looking for there. I mean, if somebody has the medication and they're saying, hey, I need help administering the medication that I have, I think most people are going to help them, take the pill. Or what? I don't know. Those things aren't inhalers, are they?
No, they're just like regular pills.
Yeah. They're talking about the Narcan. Most of the cops that carry Narcan, isn't that so? The cops, if they get it, like if they get injected, they got the Narcan for themselves, like or for them, for other cops.
No. It's just if they run into somebody who's overdosed.
Well, same thing though. If they're standing around and somebody jabs them, like as a way to to run away from the cops, they jab them with an injection of stuff.
No, it's to keep their heart from stopping.
All right. Well, with that, I don't know. I guess now we've hit a couple of things. We've tried to keep it going. Good people chatting, so we keep it going. But now we're down to 12 people watching. I guess everybody's dwindling. So we'll wrap it up.
Do you have a gun store or anything you want to throw out there?
No, not off the top of my head. You got one on the top of your head?
I don't want to force one.
I just don't have one. So we'll say, your local gun shop is the gun shop of the day. Remember them. Spend money there, especially with the NRA show coming up. Everybody's going to be paying attention to that, not paying attention to the local shops.